Alright, this is it. The YouTube documents, the YouTube archives. I'm gonna talk now. Talk a little bit about the late night drifters. The late night drifters, I've decided to continue throughout the years, and I've had to do it in a certain kind of way. Because the late night drifters has had a very unusual story behind it on how it had its run, how its run has continued in what's the word I'm looking for? An untraditional kind of way. There's a different word that I'm looking for that I can't really think of it. It's really just something that I'm deciding to put down the way I want to put it down. When I say put it down, I mean I'm trying to lay it the fuck down in a good way. You know what I'm saying? Musically, like put it the fuck down. You know what I'm saying? I've tried to do that as a songwriter, and I fell in love with songwriting. That was what happened with me in music. I played the bass for a bunch of years. I did the other video, you might have saw it, about the band Soul Plane. That's where I learned how to play the bass with Faber and Mayers and a bunch of other drummers. Too many to name. So the Late Night Drifters was more trying something, experimenting with a new idea that was kind of a Catskill thing. So me and Jack Donnelly both got to Woodstock, saw Levon Hell Midnight Ramble, and that was a jolt of great energy that we were able to watch, be a part of in Levon's living room, witness everybody in the crowd crying. It was a heart and soul moment, you know what I mean? It was that good shit. So, we came back, we started working on music, and all these cool songs started to appear from our jam sessions and stuff. And our jam sessions were more directed at trying to create songs than they were to just jamming, but we've always been kind of more jammers than like, let's sit down and write a song. That's why I wanted to get really into songwriting, and I was lucky enough to fall in love with it. Listening to some good Rick Danko records or some Hank Williams records, and driving out to Shady Maple. I started to kind of get into that idea of like, man, we got some different singers. I was so into the band at the time. You know what I mean? All I did was listen to the band for like 3 or 4 years straight. I would actually say that, near the end of the Soul Plane days, into the Late Night Drifters days, I would say that the band had a lot to do with that change, that new approach that we tried to do. Late Night Drifters started from me and Jack Donnelly jamming in his basement. Late night, old school style, like, cassette tape style recorder, messing around with some Hank Williams covers and some shit by Sam Cooke, and some Red Hot Chili Peppers obscure songs and shit like that. So we were fucking around with some, like, some musical ideas, and we were giving each other a lot of records. Like, he would give me a bunch of CDs, I'd give him a bunch of CDs, and it was really fun and innocent and beautiful, like, surge started to happen, and we started to witness songs being born, and we would go to different places and kind of just like get crazy about this whole, like, wow, we could record here and it would sound different than if we recorded there. And I was already into recording at the time, but it was cool to see him get into it as well. And then we would all, like, the whole Late Night Drifters career as a band, like, was recorded, and that was one of the things that we set out to do at the very beginning of it. Was like, all right, let's just record everything. If something's cool, it sticks. That's good. And I started to take on that role as an archiver, so I would hear everything. Because the way I would do it was I'd be on my Rollin' 18 track, and I would, you know, like listen to all the tracks and mix it and kind of like do like a real quick mastering job on it, and then I would put it on CD, take it out to my car, listen to it. I was getting real into it and shit. I was like, I felt like I was like doing the basement tapes thing. Um, and we had just returned from Big Pink because when we went up to the Midnight Ramble, that was our first time at Big Pink too. So there's just this whole crazy cool thing that was happening. And over the years, I've learned what it is and how to grow with it and everything because it was definitely like, a big change from the Philadelphia style living, which we grew up in and love and represent and all those things. But to find a town that's, in certain way, I mean, this is how I'll describe it: is Woodstock's the coolest town in the fucking universe, and Philadelphia is where I've chosen in this life and in other lives, to live my life with my tribe and all that. But at the same time, the musical tribe and the musical freedom and liberation vibe is, and spirituality and all that other stuff. That's Woodstock all day. You know what I'm saying? Um, but it's also fun to go up there and just chill and do nothing. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the greatest things about going up to Woodstock. Um, and that's something that I've adapted with because when I first went up there, I was so, oh man, I got to do this, I got to do that, and then I realized that that's not only is that not where it's at, but it takes away from the whole great vibe of it. You know what I mean? Like, um, it's a timing thing. It's always a timing thing with that town. You know what I mean? You'll know when it's your time. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, Woodstock is the coolest town in the fucking universe, and the Late Night Drifters was able to tap into that energy for the first time on our first trip to Big Pink and the Midnight Ramble and the learning of the Byrdcliffe art colony, like the philosophy behind it. I think that philosophy is that shit that, what I'm saying? It's like getting that Catskill air. It's like once you get that shit, um, it becomes it becomes an amazing utopian philosophy, and I think that that's what's so cool about it, that you can go there and see how people once lived at a certain time period that you didn't, you might not have found that pocket if or whatever, you know what I mean? Like it's just one of them places that you should always visit if you're a fan of art or whatever. um just breathe that air. So the Late Night Drifters, it's been a long, drawn out thing. And to be honest with you, in this particular video, I'm only going to really focus on the good side of it all and talk about, what I want to talk about. You know what I mean? I got to control my own destiny. And at the same time, uh, you know, I'll get into the dark side stuff of the Late Night Drifters in another video because that would take up a whole video in itself. Um, but and you know what? Maybe I'm being like hard and critical on myself because when I say myself, I mean like the creation aspect of the Late Night Drifters because I am a big fan of shadow work when it comes to music, but there's also certain levels of responsibility that goes along with that. And sometimes the Byrdcliffe Art Colony mentality can be a good thing, and sometimes it can be something, my bad, something that you gotta watch. You know what I mean? Because it's fun to go around and do the sex orgy thing or whatever with a bunch of hot girls or whatever. But at the same time, if your life is unfolding and you gotta hold it down, keep it real, sometimes that shit ain't really nothing but a distraction. You know what I mean? It's cool. Yeah, I had a good time, but I had to wait for my time. And then when my time was up, you got to be able to say, you know what, all right, my time's up with all this crazy shenanigans. You know what I'm saying? Um, but you know, the Late Night Drifters, you know, it's not supposed to be a band that's all rosy all the time. And I feel like a lot of the guys in the band, like, okay, like I'm just gonna talk about guys in the band now, all right? So we got me as a songwriter. We had Jimmy Faber playing a lot of the guitar stuff for the first three albums. Um, and those were by far, you know, the best three albums that we had done. It was also the hardest time period I've ever experienced in music. You know what I mean? Um, but that also has a lot to do with when you change your perspective and you change like the way you flow, new things come about. Like you know, if I'm fixated on one thing and then I change my fixation towards another avenue, when that wheel starts spinning, there becomes new dualities. There becomes new. What's the word I'm looking for? Like new consequences, new reactions to vibrational change and spiritual, you know, outlooks or you know, certain kinds of ideologies, whatever you want to call it, you know. Um, but when those kinds of shifts happen, um, you know, it brings upon, you know, new challenges and stuff like that. So this is what I would say about the first three records with Jimmy Faber on guitar. Is during the first record he helped out so much with the sound because you know, I remember talking with him about it and just being like, look, like, let's not do the jam thing, let's try something different. um, and he was cool with that, and we both kind of agreed that like being like a cultured band when it comes to like roots music would be like a good thing for this you know, experiment or whatever. um, and he was really good with that. He would bring these country riffs together, and you know, if I was playing like a song like I Find Trouble, he would you know, uh, be able to come up with a part for it that was just perfect. And you know, a lot of like what me and Jack were pulling from would be like the Ronnie Hawkins or the Levon and the Hawks stuff. Like we were kind of getting into a different era of music than what we were than what Soul Plane was before. Even, I mean, Soul Plane had that too, but in Soul Plane, you know, when I think about certain songs, I think about like, you know, the Rolling Stones or like the Red Hot Chili Peppers or something like that. But with the Late Night Drifters, it was more, you know, like that Ronnie Hawkins and the Hawks, Levon and the Hawks, the band, Hank Williams, and we messed around with a little bit of R&B and stuff like that. But I chose to leave a song that's called "It's All for You" that was written um, by Faber and me. Came up with the guitar part, and then he wrote a line of the song. Like he wrote the first line of the song or something like that, and then like I was pretty good just kind of filling out songs and stuff. So I just filled it out, and then that song did not really make it on the Art and Soul record, and that's no diss to Faber. It just didn't really fit the way I thought that the album should go. It was on the original release, but it wasn't on the re-release, and I don't know. It just, I'm not dissing nothing, but it just had a certain kind of like if we're cooking up stuff, if we're chefs, and that's what all of our gift is music is what we're doing. I've learned that there's so many different flavors and so many different tribes of people that, you know, might like this or might like that or might like this, and it's real smart to be real open minded towards what everybody's doing, and like I really thought like hard about this. Um, the reason why I left it off of the re-releases is because when me and Faber went separate ways musically, um, it wasn't like on great terms. So I decided to put the whole record out as a whole and just say fuck it because we worked hard on it. You know what I mean? Especially me on that album, man. I gotta be honest. Like, so me and Mark Klorowski. This is the Art and Soul record I'm talking about. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear on that. The Art and Soul record. Me and Mark Klorowski spent endless hours, smoking weed and trying to fucking mix that album, and the takes were okay, but like the overall, when the magic's on the record or not, the overall sound needed to be enhanced. So we worked really hard with Logic, and we had these really long days and shit like that. Like these long, like 8, 9 hour days of mixing and mastering and all that shit. And a lot of so I guess what happened was, see, this is another thing I didn't think about for a while. Like, I remember the first day that they cut, like, because I couldn't make it the very first day of cutting, and they were willing to go down to Mark's house and do the cutting there, and that was cool that they did that. You know what I mean? That they were because I for whatever reason I was like out of town or some shit. I forget what it was, but I was like, I can't do it. Might have been like, I don't remember what it was. I might have been in Belize. Can you believe that? Um, but so all right, so um, there was a lot of songs that were cut around that time, and I'm trying to imagine exactly what songs they were. Um, I have the demos around or whatever they ended up being. I think some stuff was kept. Like, there was this one really good demo that they did of a song that I never even heard. See, that's the thing, is like we weren't actually. I was throwing Mark a little bit of coin for the recording, which is probably why I ended up being a producer on it. Um, so I threw him a little bit of coin, but that's what I'm saying is like, okay, so if they went down to cut, they did like 4 or 5 tracks of like what we were supposed to do, and then they like, got in like an original or something, which, I always encouraged, like, you know, in any project, like, when you're in the studio, like, try something new, even if, you only have a certain amount of time or something. There's just something about like getting in there, get loosened up, and if the magic's flowing, it's not something that you don't want to control that. You want to get out of the way of that and just let it flow. And I remember there was one track from the demos that I got or whatever they ended up being, um, that was like really cool. It was like an R&B thing, which I thought actually gave me an idea for a whole nother record that never got recorded. But I remember that, like, something that it was something that Faber laid down that could have been like, the direction of the next album. And around that time, right before we made that album, me and Faber started seeing differently on the vision of it. Because like when I brought Mark in as a producer engineer, I knew that he had specialties in electronic music, and I was listening to a lot of like that real crazy Fushanti shit around that time, and I could kind of hear something happening. Um, but I guess as far as the Galactic Tribe goes, it was something that I could see, but maybe not make happen. Um, with how it just all went down, it was just crazy, man. But uh, okay, so that was, art soul stuff. I'm gonna just focus in on songs right now, like not just from that album, but from other eras and albums and stuff like that. Because I think that songwriting is probably the thing that, you know made me want to keep doing this and keep putting it down. Because for a while, um, the way things went down, I felt like with the late night drifters that we were like a super tight crew and that we were all doing what we wanted to do and doing what we were supposed to do and kind of like just having like a huge umbrella of what we could do. Um, Underneath this, having a large, whatever you want to call it, infinite space to create music, um, and the possibilities were endless. It was really exciting times, really. It's such a weird thing. If you really focus in on the good, it was really good. Going up to Woodstock and getting that George Harrison vibe on. Exploring Lancaster. Just playing gigs like and just recording everything. It was just really cool. So with songwriting, like we had started to tap into a new side of what me and Faber were doing too, because Faber at this point was ripping solos so hard, and you had to let him do his thing, and then at the same time we were also focused on songwriting. So like I was coming into it as a writer, and he was like peaking. I don't want to say peaking because I mean I'm just saying like he was hitting a peak for that era on guitar. Um, and I was capturing it on record. So what we were doing is we were all experimenting with singing and we were all experimenting with just different sounds. Like it wasn't about like, oh man, we're great singers. No, it was just more like, okay, let's just hear what we got. And like in that case, like a song that's like an unreleased kind of song that might be released or unreleased. I don't even know at this point because I just tried to put out anything that I thought sounded good on YouTube years later. Because we just did so many sessions and there's still so much stuff to go through, even though I've kind of went through a good chunk of it. Um, yeah, so a song that I would think of would be like The Times. That was a cool song. Favors messing around with some country sounds and messing around with words. Um, Another good thing like that would be like Jack Donnelly like singing certain songs. Like Jack Donnelly singing songs like Dodge City, which was like a song by our homie Splat. Um, Splat and I wrote Dodge City after a late night at Craig's Tavern. They had that card machine, Dodge City, and then we would go out to Chester Springs, all the way across town, 45 minutes away, and fucking record music. In my basement, we would do these long recording sessions for fucking, you know, 2 a.m. to fucking 6 a.m. Partying hard, boozing, fucking, yakking, the whole nine. Um, but, we were coming up with really good songs. We were being real productive at that time. And a lot of that had to do with um, Splat and this is like years before the Late Night Drifters. This is probably about like a year or two before the Late Night Drifters. And I have to remind myself these things because all these things are like peaks and valleys. And if you can find where the peak is, uh, it makes the valley, less shitty. You know what I mean? It's always a search for that, next piece of great art or whatever. If you're in this thing the way that, I think all these musicians that I'm talking about or whatever is. Um, it's like Splat. So Splat would be like chilling at the famous bar and grill. Me and Splat, Joey J. Uh, who else would be up there? Like Shane the Barberry, and these friends of ours, and so we would stay up all night partying, and then be like, "Yo, let's go record some fucking tunes." And that's pretty much the whole Splat and the Shoeshine catalog from 2004 ish to 2000 and 2008. Splat got sober in 2008. He did the AA thing, and he's been sober ever since. Uh, Almost a little bit too sober, if you ask me. You know what I mean? No, I just mean it as in like, I'm still waiting for the Splat and the Shoeshines Edge to return to the recording fold because I really, really like that shit. The Splat and the Shoeshines was my favorite project to ever work on. Uh, Me and Splat these days are just in two different spots in life, and you know, until he lets me drive the ship of the Splat and the Shoeshines the way I used to drive it, being on guitar and in the production seat. Um, I'm just gonna let him do his thing until he figures it out. But I don't know. Splat was always a hard one for me to work with in the studio, and that's the weird part. It's like me and Splat would get so much good shit done, but like it would get like volatile, where I'd be like, "Come on, man, do it more like this. What the fuck are you doing?" You know what I mean? And then he would be like, "Oh man, it's harder than it looks." and then like and then we would end up fighting, like trying to make something great happen, and then something great would happen because we would find this common ground and shit and understand like it's not, okay, so if I'm on just guitar, when I say just guitar, I mean I could actually just sit there and just focus on just the chords and just the rhythm. Um, I can lay something down that like a singer can come in and just really just crush it on, you know what I mean? It's harder for me in other projects when I'm on acoustic guitar and singing at the same time, but I've gotten to love that, grown to love that. But with Splat, it was like we would do these acoustic-y kind of songs, and it would be just me and him, and you know, he he would be singing and I would be playing, so we have to have that let's listen to each other thing, and I've always had